Hey, everybody, welcome to the Daily Objective. And today we've got quite a topic for you. You might have heard about incels, involuntary celibates, but there's actually something called femcels, who, in my understanding, it's not that they're involuntarily celibate, but they just maybe they've given up on trying to find a good partner. They don't think there's one for them. That's my understanding. We're going to learn more about this. Please super chat if you have any questions, comments, or want to show support. And also please consider becoming an Ayn Rand Center UK member to get exclusive access to study groups and content and help this thing grow so we could spread a positive philosophy for the femcels, the incels, and everybody else. We've got a special guest today. She is the co-host of Flirting with Reason, the hit new show on Clubhouse. Maria, hi.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on the show.
Sure. And we have a guy who, I'm going to guess he's not an incel. This is a guy who is a happily productive and successful actor. It's Mark Pellegrino.
What's up, man?
Hey, and we've got our very own, I call him like the scientist of all things love and romance. He's sort of an expert on the sort of incel, femcel, and all things related to movements that relate to all of this, if that makes sense. The way I see him anyway. Let's find out what he knows about this topic. Please welcome Nikos Sotirakopoulos.
Thanks. Mostly on incels. On femcels, I'm here to learn, although I've learned some things last week. So first of all, let's come up with a definition. So incel, involuntary celibate men, femcel, female celibate women. Now, there is a difference in the archetype. So the archetype of the incel is the guy who is socially awkward, who cannot speak to women, who hasn't got much romantic chance, although he wants to. But he finds himself being rejected by women. Now, from what I've understood with some sources that Maria gave us, who with her, let's say, antennas captured that there is a lot of talk about this phenomenon, looks like the archetype of the femcel is a bit of a different one. It's mostly successful women or women who are professionals, so not the archetype that you live on a basement archetype. But the reason they are struggling romantically is that they cannot find someone who they consider a good romantic partner. So it's less of, I cannot find anyone because I cannot talk to women. And it's more like, I cannot find a guy who is up to my standards. And then it goes various ways from there. It can be, where have all the good men gone? Or where have all the real men gone? Or where have all the men who are not sexist pigs gone? Because these are the only men that are talking to me. So these are some of the categories. And I throw the ball back to the table for you to pick on whichever of these things you want.
There seems to be a split through history, at least in modern times, where like some guys are D-bags, if I can use monetizable language, like jocks, I guess, in the sort of, in like a 90s movie, 80s movie stereotype or archetype. And then on the flip side, you got the nerd.
Wait, I have 0 out of 2. I don't know what neither of these mean.
You don't
How
know
do millennials call them?
Well, I don't know. Millennials are weird, but millennials, and Zoomers, they can sort of blend everything together. Like you can be a jock and a nerd or whatever. But I'm talking about like there's been these like two different archetypes. There's like the jock who's like he treats women, without a lot of respect, but they've got a certain swagger. And then on the flip side, the other side of the coin, you have the nerd who's like, oh, why won't she give me a chance? I'll treat her right. So there's a sort of like split between the nerds and the jocks. And it sounds like it's carried itself into adulthood for some people, in the minds of some people. Like women feel like the only guys that have any game whatsoever, they treat me badly. And then the other guys, they're just not confident enough. Is that basically how these femcels feel? Maria?
Let's hear from yes, on the left about it.
Yes. Well, I'll definitely agree on the point that it's probably less involuntary and mostly voluntary. From observations that I've been doing in the last couple of weeks, and also from something that I guess we've talked about previously on Clubhouse, there seems to be two groups. One of them is girls that have become potentially disillusioned with dating, or they've had a bad experience, or they lack self-esteem and they just don't even want to get out there. So they don't really date around, and it's a bit of a snake that eats its own tail. The less they date, the less likely they're to find someone, the more hostile they grow towards men, because they kind of think that maybe men are supposed to come and find them, which doesn't happen, of course. And then the second group of women is what Nikos mentioned. They're probably a little bit older, but again, like you said, successful, independent, and they seem to be getting out there, and they are actively dating or testing the pool, for lack of a better word, but they can't seem to find someone. And then there grows the same level of resentment and hostility, because, like you said, they start to question, where are all the good guys? But I think here, that's where it gets interesting, because while I would never encourage anyone to lower their standards, I think it's also important to have a bit of a self-check and introspect a little bit, because I think sometimes women might have a very long and unrealistic list that they have for men. And obviously everyone wants to attract a high value partner, but they're unable to do it because either that list is unrealistic or it's realistic, but there are good men, but they're very few and far between. And not every woman with a very long list of demands is herself living up to what she expects from a potential partner.
Got a few super chats real quick. Robert with $5 says, no question, just wanted to see if I could be the first to super chat. And then Marilyn with $5 says, was that a gauntlet, Robert? And then Christopher with $2.79 Canadian says, third is the charm. Thanks, you guys. Can any of you guys beat them in super chats? I'm skeptical. I'm wondering if any of you are up for the challenge in top super chatter of the day. Now, Mark, you are, I think, what they would call like a bit of a catch, a high value partner. You're a married man. How thankful are you to be off the market the way the world is going from hearing these stories? And also, do you think it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy the way these women are saying there's no one out there? Doesn't that kind of become true from having that mindset?
I do not know. Well, first of all, yes, it feels good to be off the market. I don't know what to make of any of this confusion. There seems to be confusion all across the spectrum of sexuality and dating and expressing yourself as a man or a woman and finding an adequate partner. And I think radical skepticism is the reason that there's so much so many issues and so much uncertainty out there as in general. But I just need to learn about what these phenomena are. I have no real connection with this at all. So I feel like I'm looking at an octopus world, like a completely alien phenomenon to me. So please educate me.
Well,
okay, let's help.
Can I ask, Mark, can you tie radical skepticism to what the topic is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are suffering from a crisis of knowledge, and that includes what they are, who they are, what they want, what their expectations are, and that applies to sexuality and sexual expression, like how men are, how women are. I think people are very confused about what all of those labels, quote unquote, mean. And should they have standards? I don't know. I'm confused. I'm confused about this whole thing right now, about this world that you guys are painting for me. So that's where I think radical skepticism comes in.
I just add something. I don't think femcels actually self-identify as femcels. I do think that that's a label that, journalists have to give people so that they can write about these topics. So they probably aren't self-identified, because I don't know if anyone admits to that. Maybe
okay, that's a step in the right direction, at least. I thought they're like the incels going around identifying as like basically undesirable or unable to get a partner. So why would anyone
there is a
admit
powerful Reddit, how it's called in Reddit, subreddit, something with femcels. So there is such a similarity in terms of it's people meeting online to discuss their struggles. But also there was an article in The Guardian some time ago, and there was a woman who said, look, there's a phenomenon here. I'm towards my 40s, I'm single, and I don't know how to call myself. And she's basically asking for a reappropriation of the term spinster. So she says, I used to be called spinster. this used to have this patriarchal sexist attitude, but now we need to repackage this term and reappropriate it because the struggle is real. There are men in my position. This is something that came with women's liberation, that we don't feel the pressure to find the men, and we shouldn't feel a failure if we hadn't found the men. So we shouldn't be afraid to call ourselves incel. But what I find interesting in this discussion is an alternative title to this would be why identity politics is killing your romantic life. So a big part, I think, of this phenomenon is that it's this idea that the way culture today celebrates women in terms of us completely, you have to be something completely independent from men. Don't do anything, just to please men. Be your own thing. It has something empowering in it, but if you take it in the wrong context, things can really, really go wrong. So what we see quite often is that, again, according to the data we have, and where do we get most of this data? From the analytics that the dating sites are giving us. So we see that women are way, way, way more picky than men, which it might be okay. It might be that they have high standards and we have low standards, whatever. But what we find is that women are complaining that I cannot find a man who is at my standard, but at the same time, they say 80% of men are not in my standard. So the numbers don't add up. I mean, I'm not very good in maths, but if 70% of women say that only 20% of men are in my standards, there's going to be two outcomes. These 20% of men are going to have a plethora of options, which again, if we believe the analytics, it is what's happening. But also it will mean that at some point you realize, okay, this guy is not going to commit, but now I need someone to build my life around. So you're left with people that you don't really find attractive, and they don't really give rise to this genuine desire inside you. So and back in the day, you would say, okay, my mission is to marry whatever, I'm going to end up with this guy. So here's an alternative. Could it be that the fact that there's so many women today that are single in these ages means that they do not lower, that back in the day, they would end up with a guy who they wouldn't have this desire for? So could we say that there might even be something positive at it? Of course, conservatives are going to say, no, there's nothing positive at it, because what about families that these women are not going to be happy, that they have decades in front of them of loneliness and all that stuff? So I don't know. So Maria, do you think that it's an issue that these women back in the day would just settle down and now they don't want to settle down, and maybe there's something healthy in it?
Yeah, potentially. I think there's definitely some wisdom to it. Like you said, the liberation of women and probably the lowering of the pressure to get married and have a family, that plays into women becoming pickier, like you say. I mean, I think it's definitely better to be a femcel, although you can also just call yourself an unmarried woman, in that, if it's if spinster equals femcel, then surely we can just call them unmarried women or unattached women. Femcel has a bit of a weird connotation, but yeah, in any case, it's better to be alone than in bad company. So, there's maybe nothing bad.
We see this gap on both. Sorry, we see this gap on both parts. So we see it both on, as you said, around 40, but also we see in earlier ages that women, it takes more time for them to have their first sexual experiences, which again, it could be related to how sex is problematized in terms of maybe the idea that men are dangerous, or in the post-Me Too era, it's difficult for young people to understand what are the very delicate balance of how you navigate your sexual life. So it could be that with older women, it is what you said, but what about younger women? What about women in their early 20s who, again, statistics show more and more women are not having sex, or they have sex later and later, and they're not in a committed relationship?
I don't know if that's true. I mean, that might be true. I don't know. I wouldn't have much to add to that because I haven't seen the numbers. I mean, honestly, I sometimes think that it's not that different today than it was 30 years ago. We just talk about it more. We have more platforms that shed light on these things. I mean, sometimes I speak to my mom and even my grandma, and honestly, a lot of the stuff people deal with today, people dealt with there as well. It's just maybe it was on a slightly different level. But yeah, I don't know why. From my personal observations in my circle of friends or network, extended network, there are so many young and beautiful single girls that are just they're reluctant to form relationships, and I don't know if that's a self-preservation thing. Like they maybe think that I'm going to get disappointed anyway. There are no good guys around. They've had a painful breakup, but obviously, and they kind of judge everything based on that. Now, obviously, that comes from a self-esteem and B, not have, you need to have the right philosophy and kind of right outlook on life. You have to be a little bit more realistic and not sort of pigeonhole yourself in your bubble.
And the more you discuss this, the more it sounds like MGTOWs rather than incels. So MGTOWs are the guys who says the juice is not worth the squeeze. So it's going to be too painful. I'm going to be in danger. I don't know, false allegations, divorce, whatever. So and there's this idea that the world out there is full of risks, which is a very annoying idea today, that I cannot make sense of the world. I haven't got a real agency. It's things are happening to me rather than I make things happen. I'm going to get hurt. Like, okay, yes, you will get hurt in a disappointment, but you still have the agency to navigate these waters. And I think it's this idea that we're missing today, the idea that we have the agency to take control of these situations. These things are not things that come on our heads out of the blue. Anyway, Rucka, you were trying to say something.
A couple super chats. We got Ed with €5 or pounds says, Maria, you look great. Well, that's kind of a 90s thing to say. We don't speak that way to women in the workplace. But since you put some money behind it, we'll allow it this time. Mary-Aline with $2 says,
by the way, I welcome super chats telling me that I'm looking good, but it has to be, $5 is
and we'll have to clear it. Mary-Aline with $2 says relationship skills can be learned. I mean, that's the part of this that I think speaks to Mark's point. And Maria saying that people need a philosophy. Like, people are too deductive. They're rationalistic. They're not inductive. They're not actually basing their views of relationships based on actual, like, first-handed approaches to the world and collecting actual data. So everyone is just kind of like deciding like what the world is like up in their head and then trying to slam it down on the world. I know I am ironically sort of overgeneralizing in a way that might be a little bit troublesome.
Sorry. I just wanted to make an observation. Maria, you know more about this than I do, so you can tell me if this is sort of on point or not. And maybe we've already said it just in different words. I feel like the femcel thing seems to be somewhat of a healthy orientation to men who are no longer masculine and no longer confident, and women who have a greater share of the workforce, clear about their vocations, don't need men anymore to fulfill their lives. And the MGTOW incel thing are just sort of loser, cynical men. The MGTOW is, taking the more assertive part of this cynicism, but their side seems to be just cynical, deterministic, and if I were a woman, I wouldn't want either of those douchebags. I mean, it seems like a very healthy reaction to say, the field out there is narrowing, and I don't think I'm going to partake. At least, the celibacy part is linking sex to values and to somebody actually representing high quality living, at least from my perspective. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, I think, I agree. I mean, it's also, I don't think it's about sex for women as much as it is about sex for the traditional incel. It's more the relationship, the finding a partner, and, like you said, don't want to settle for less. But just to your point on the whole masculinity, femininity thing as well, I do agree. I think maybe women have become a little bit, well, not a little bit, much more independent, and we don't depend on the man for a lot of the things. And I don't know if the men have reconciled with that point very well still. So there seems to be a discrepancy where women maybe became a bit more masculine, whatever that means. Men, and somewhere they surpassed each other and didn't really meet in the middle.
I think good men would recognize that and actually enjoy that, to be honest with you. I would, for sure.
Yeah. Well,
sorry, Nikos, what were you saying?
No, I would just say that again, part of this profile of the modern woman who is, go get her, and the problem is that this creates a confusion in terms of your value as a woman and the value that the guy sees on you, because these two quite often are not on the same page. So let's take this example. Let's say someone is a successful in an executive position, and let's say she's in her 40s, and she's wondering, why are the guys at my level are mostly looking at let's say the young secretary. So could it be that this discussion is leading us to the key question, which is, could it be that men and women have different standards in terms of what they're looking for? And if there's confusion in terms of because again, the question is of value to whom and for what. Maybe productivity is your most important value, and more power to you. And of course, it's not incompatible with a great romantic life. But it could be a situation, or at a particular stage of life, that just what you see yourself as super valuable, men don't consider it valuable. And it could be because men are shallow, whatever. The fact of reality is that it happens. So should we just accept that that indeed maybe the genders are different and they are looking for different things, and society telling us that they are not, and that if you are, let's say, the alpha woman, you're going to have equal success as the guy who's the alpha man, which how did Rucka, I mean, nowadays Rucka millennials call them chads, you call them jacks or something like that. But so yeah, being the female version of the chads is not as attractive to men as being the chads in terms of how attractive they are to women. Do that make sense here?
Yes, but there's so much to uncover with everything you just said. I mean,
let's uncover it.
Let me read a couple super chats real quick, and
sure.
And Maria, you can uncover or unpack, whichever you prefer. Mary Aline with $2 says, "Don't write people off till you get to know them." That's good advice. Boy, are we sending out some Me Too notices today. Shona with £5 says, "Nikos, you are awesome." Guys, please, seriously, stop hitting on our host.
Thank you, sir.
George with £4.99 says, "Making it rain for my sexy boy Nikos." Wow. Imagine speaking that way to somebody in the workplace. Thank you for the super chats. And Maria, any thoughts on what Nikos just basically dropped off and ran off laughing?
Yeah. If you're a successful, like you said, alpha woman, look, if you want to attract and whatever the successful alpha male is, whatever the alpha male means, I think there's enough alpha males and alpha females to find each other. No one's guaranteed to find love. I mean, let's get that out of the way. So everything that we might be discussing, there will still be people that will end up uncoupled, or whatever, if you want to call it that. But no, I don't agree that we are that different, and I don't agree that what successful alpha male find attractive is not what the successful alpha female brings to the table. Because if you value similar things in life, and you're looking for someone who's a reflection or a mirror of your values, who you are as your personality traits, then you will attract that person. Again, people that are like you there probably aren't that many of them, but I don't think it's that dire and that depressing to say that, well, what men value is not what females value in a potential partner, and we are doomed to be alone or constantly misunderstanding each other. So,
well, I mean, not to hit the men are from Mars, women are from Venus vein too hard. You don't think? Look, I mean, it feels like in these two crazy movements, the actual difference between the two is sort of summed up. The women who are imposing the celibacy on themselves are looking for relationships, and the men are looking for sex. And I'm not saying that there aren't women who just exclusively look for sex, but that is sort of a male perspective. I think women are just deeper. They're just deeper in that way than men are, and that's no accident. I think that may be hardwired into our biology for somewhat self-evident reasons. But what do you have to say about that?
Can I just jump in? I would definitely call into question anything that is proposed to be hardwired into us. I think a lot of what we see around us is, I guess, learned or something that is not necessarily hardwired. I mean, I think a lot of men definitely are looking for relationships. When you look at all these incels, they're not just saying, I need somebody to have sex with me, but nobody will. Like they're lonely, and they're sort of giving up on everything that kind of comes along with sex. So
I mean, this is sort of a different topic, but I do think sex is a combination of many things. I think it's very complicated, and we can't say that hardwiring, that biological element or evolutionary element isn't there. Certainly we have control over it, and certainly culture and what we learn also has some input. But I do think men and women approach relationships in different ways, and I think they have a different language. Well, actually, we all do, right? According to the love languages thing, and we do need to sort of understand each other's territory and the way we look at things and come to terms with that. I think that's important.
Can I say something to add to what Rucka said? So, if you ask most of the famous pickup artists who have many clients, who are your clients and why do they come to you? They will tell you the vast majority sweet guys who want two things: either to talk to women because they could never do so, or the second, or perhaps the first most popular category, because they want to win their ex back. So yes, I agree that the romantic element is there. By the way, that's why I'm really pissed off quite often when people throw a blanket dismissal of people who, quote, teach social skills or game. Because mostly it speaks to people who otherwise they would swallow the black pill. This is basically it means, become a MGTOW saying, well, it's not worth it, I'm gonna go away from the game. So that's why I'm saying that identity politics really poison the realm of relationships, because it basically tells you, no, you don't have to take feedback from each other. So I wouldn't be surprised if many of the women who find themselves in the femcel category don't even consider asking or discussing men, what do you find attractive in a woman? And at the same time, a lot of people who find themselves in the incel category, they say, oh, it's because of feminism or the government or whatever, not actually trying to take the self-development route. And Jordan Peterson had said something very nice. He said, if you have been rejected by 50 women, this is basically nature giving you a sign or something like that. And what he means is reality is giving you a signal. It's a reality check that you need to change something. So we find ourselves in this world where we walk on eggshells, and this is bad for both men and women. So basically, how about we get rid of identity politics, and our romantic life is going to be much better, and we're going to have way fewer problems to solve.
Roland in the super chat with 549 euros says, Mark, you look like a movie star. Wow, the flirting is just out of control here today. I mean, literally, I can't think of any of the hosts here today who did not get flirted with. Any thoughts on that? Any of you? On what Nikos just said?
I want to hear Maria's point of view about all this, because I'm curious.
Again, I feel like there's a lot that Nikos has mentioned. The communication part, I definitely agree with. That we need to kind of listen to our male and female counterparts. But you have to be honest with yourself, I think, when you're, dating around or on dating apps. What is it that you're looking for? Are you constantly going on dates with the wrong guys, and that's why you think there aren't the good ones out there? You have to have a very good sense of self before you can even start dating successfully. But even then, nothing's guaranteed. And from 10 dates that you go on, and maybe one will be, someone that's potential. But for that one, there might be 10 other amazing women like you, and vice versa. Vying for the same guy.
Do you think that some of these movements come out of the instantaneous gratification sense? Like people just aren't used to having to work for something anymore and failing, over and over?
For sure. I mean, very possibly. I don't know who's working at what less, the men or the women, or maybe both in equal measures. Yeah, I think men have become a bit more reserved, and maybe, I don't know, or like they've kind of retracted into their shells. I don't know if the women are scaring them or what, or maybe yeah, again, or maybe the women think that the men have to, I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to think about that one, to be honest.
Okay, thinking a bit out loud here. So here's a society that tells you, basically, in order to earn something, claim the status of the victim or claim the status of identity. Is it a surprise that people are entitled to stuff? So basically, I'm spending most of my time in my basement. Where are the women in my life? Or I have an unpleasant character, or whatever, I don't want to work on myself. Where are all my sexual partners? So in a way, again, Maria mentioned it, and the other two, you two also mentioned it. It does come down to ideas. Okay, I don't want to sound like, oh, it's all, but in a way it is about ideas. So thinking about what have been my biggest philosophical mistakes, there have been on the romantic sphere. So if I go back and see when I had the wrong premises, or when I thought I had the right premises, but I hadn't internalized them, and sure, I still haven't internalized them, what is the number one area where you can see your mistake staring you in the eye? It is the romantic realm. So at the end of the day, yes, as Rucka says in almost every episode, it comes down to philosophy. And in one way it does, even when it comes to these things that supposedly have not got to do with that. Anyway, shall we move to Clubhouse at some point? Or is there a memo by the boss that today's episode is longer?
Well, no memo from him yet, but bread sandwich in the super chat says, Rucka, heart, I like your personality. Well, thank you for that. I mean, it's not exactly appropriate in the workplace, but I'll take it. And I didn't even have to fish for it. That's nice of you to say. Yeah, there's that instant gratification culture. People are used to just having stuff handed to them. And also like victimization culture. Like if I'm a victim, I have high status. But guess what? That doesn't come with. It doesn't come with a girlfriend or boyfriend. So you can earn victim points all day, but what do you actually want out of life? And is this route helping you get there? You know what I was thinking about recently? This is the kind of stuff I sit around and think about. The split we've seen over the social justice issue in the last 5 years or whatever. A lot of the anti-social justice people are like stereotypically unadjusted, like maladjusted losers who in recent times have learned how to sit up straight, like Jordan Peterson and people like that have taught them, sit up straight, get some nicer clothes, take care of yourself. So you got like grimy people turning into a little bit cleaner people. And on the flip side, a lot of the social justice people, they're like kind of popular. They have the people skills, and they've philosophically gone down this route that tells them, don't shave any part of you. Being ugly is just as good as being beautiful, Lena Dunham and all that stuff.
Even worse, that there is no such thing as beauty, and right. Take it and basically we're going to show in your face that there is no such thing as beauty.
Yeah. And gain as much weight as you want. Nobody can judge. So interestingly, you've got like the maladjusted losers over the last few years, many of them learning how to clean up a bit. And on the flip side, you had people who maybe in the first place didn't have any problem sort of cleaning up and getting along with people. Sort of philosophically, they've followed a route that tells them, let yourself go. And being gross is a feminist statement. So isn't that a little bit of an interesting, the world, the Chinese proverb says, may you live during interesting times. We certainly are. Should we jump over to Clubhouse? Was that, by the way, coming up on Wednesday, we got Flirting with Reason with Maria and Nikos. And that's every Wednesday at 9 p.m. UK time, 4 p.m. Eastern on Radio Ragnar, which is the Ayn Rand Center UK Clubhouse Club. So find us there on Clubhouse, and we're jumping over there right now as soon as we're done. And we'll be back here tomorrow for the Daily Objective. Thank you, Nikos, Mark, and thank you, Maria, especially. Great to have you and great to talk to all of you here. See you back here, everyone, for the Daily Objective tomorrow, and see you on Clubhouse momentarily. Goodbye.